Let's hand it on off to Alexandria Hoff, live in Washington with the latest on the Iran negotiations. Alex.
Hey, good morning to you both. The U.S. and Iran plan to hold talks this weekend in Islamabad. Vice President Vance leading those, as President Trump says U.S. forces will remain in the region until a lasting peace agreement is made. He wrote this, quote, all U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel with additional ammunition, weaponry, and anything else that is appropriate and necessary for the lethal prosecution and destruction of an already substantially degraded enemy will remain in place and around Iran until such time as the real agreement reached is fully complied with. Now, the current ceasefire does remain fragile, as you said. Iran claims that it has already been breached by Israeli strikes on Lebanon targeting Hezbollah. The Iranian-backed militant group vowed to continue attacks on Israel. In response to that, the U.S. and Israel both say Lebanon was not included in the ceasefire, a misunderstanding, according to the vice president.
What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on its allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. If Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Iran's foreign minister, he objects to that, writing this, the Iran-U.S. ceasefire terms are clear and explicit. The U.S. must choose ceasefire or continued war via Israel. It cannot have both. The world sees the massacres in Lebanon. The ball is in the U.S. court, and the world is watching whether it will act on its commitments. Iranian state media also reporting that Tehran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is a major point of contention and of disagreement right now. The U.S. and allies demand it remains open. Guys.
All right, Alexandria Hoff, live for us in Washington. Alex, thank you. Let's bring in Chief Strategist of the Middle East Forum and former U.S. Army Special Forces member Jim Hansen. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. We got a little bit of clarity yesterday when it comes to the starting point for these negotiations with White House Press Secretary.
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
Okay, so the plan that was widely reported, that was basically an Iranian wish list we can all throw out in the trash, but there are still a whole lot of daylight between the two sides here. The United States, Israel, and Iran. So given what we know so far, which is not a whole lot, how do you think negotiations are going to go this weekend?
One thing to consider about a ceasefire is it's not a peace deal. You know, if we had all of this hammered out beforehand and the deal was ready, we wouldn't have to negotiate one. So I think the idea of a ceasefire is to stop shooting long enough that we can go ahead and start beating, the actual plan into shape. There is a lot of room between the two. 10-point plan was wish casting on their part, and they didn't expect a lot of that. But they need to realize that President Trump is not going to cave or compromise in any way on the most important things: no nukes, no missiles, and no funding terror in the region. They're going to agree to those, or there will be no deal.
And also, Jim, the Strait of Hormuz is a major issue and really up in the air, with Iran saying they're blocking the strait because of Israel and Hezbollah. There's also this situation with the tolls where Iran is charging tolls for ships to cross. And then President Trump yesterday said that this could ultimately be a joint venture between the U.S. and Iranians. So where do things go with the Strait of Hormuz?
It needs to open one way or another. President Trump, I think, is giving the Iranians a little bit